Well, the Sun says it's crazy, the ban on smoking outside pubs. I was around when they banned smoking inside pubs. The damage that it did in my area, the northwest of England. I mean, I worked at one point for the Member of Parliament for Morecambe, and, you know, a place like Morecambe and Blackpool, these sorts of tourist resorts, which really had been struggling for years, it sent so many businesses to the wall. It was absolutely dreadful. But, of course, nothing more important than Labour virtue signalling, is there? Anyway, Ben Habib is here. He's the former Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Ben, I mean, you came on to talk about migrants, but let's talk a little bit about the smoking ban. I've been clear. I stopped smoking when my mum was diagnosed with lung cancer. Don't regret it. Think smoking was a bad idea. But at the same time, I worry about the damage to the economy. It's so much cheaper to drink at home. Pubs are closing left, right and centre.
Yeah, I mean, there's a damage to the economy, and there's also the dumbing down of, you know, personal agency and our ability to make our own choices. We should be allowed to damage our own health if we wish to. You know, the nanny state takes the precautionary principle to the point where we are having our free will repeatedly stripped from us. And of course, the best example of that was during the COVID pandemic, when we were all locked up in order to protect the elderly and the vulnerable, even though we knew, even at the outset, that the vast majority of people would not be affected by it. And actually, as far as smoking goes, you know, I enjoy the odd cigar, and I don't want to be fine. People don't want cigar smoke in an enclosed area. I get it. It's pretty offensive. It stinks. Your clothes stink. You feel pretty wretched the next morning. But I can't make a case for being prevented from going outside, sitting down with a drink and having a cigar. And if someone doesn't like the odd waft of a bit of tobacco coming their way, they can move tables, can't they? Or they can leave. People should be, you know, people should be
many of these outdoor areas were built for the purposes of smoking. So remember, what you're doing is you're going to the smoking bit and then complaining there's smoke there.
Absolutely right. I mean, I just find the whole thing is, you know, continual interference by the state in our personal lives, and the excuse used as the risks, typically the risks to our health and safety. But we should be allowed to judge our own health and safety. We should be allowed to make those decisions. You know, it's like going from 30 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour. They say it's much safer. I remember I was doing 24 miles an hour in a 20 mile an hour zone, and I got the option of doing one of those speed awareness courses in which they told me how much safer it was if you hit someone at 20 miles an hour versus 30 miles an hour. But I remember exactly the same lecture being given to me 10 years ago when the speed limit was 30, and people were saying, actually, it's so much safer than 40 miles an hour. I mean, they just twist the narrative to sort their own
But Ben, there's a fairly obvious thing. Cars that travel at 0 miles an hour are safer than cars that travel at 20, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just a perfunctory fact, right? I mean, the reality is, I'll tell you what they don't tell you, that the danger on the motorways of putting the speed limit up to 90 is negligible as well. That one is not mentioned at speed awareness courses because it doesn't fit with the general narrative. But I just feel now, I said this at the beginning of the show, I feel that I'm ruled rather than governed. I feel that now there are a group of people, when you get into Parliament, it is your job to tell everybody how to live their lives. You don't need to run the NHS well. You don't need to run the military well. You don't need to worry about foreign affairs. You can put a man who has the IQ of my lunch in charge of the Foreign Office. But as long as you tell everybody what to do, you're good to go.
Absolutely right. And we see that in the whole woke agenda, don't we? Where we're told that, you know, men can be women, 99% of women don't have a penis, but 1% do, that ethnic minorities and their cultures should be given greater preference and celebrated more in our society than the majority. You know, these are views that are coming down to us from on top, with which we are not entitled to derogate, which we cannot challenge. And actually, people are now even being arrested and put in jail if they challenge them. You know, the whole thing has gone absolutely mad. And we've got to reverse all of this.
Is this an attempt to basically replace British culture with something else?
I mean, there's been a long assault on all things British by those who, for some reason, hold the United Kingdom in shame, our history in shame. They wish to remove the nation state that is the United Kingdom. And actually, at the risk of being arrested and certainly at the risk of offending Keir Starmer, I think he is anti-British.
Yes.
He's someone who doesn't believe that we should have borders. He's, and I can say that with certainty because he wants to take us back into the EU. And at the heart of the EU's project is the removal of borders and therefore the end of nation states. The Europhiles bang the drum about how attractive it is to be able to travel across Europe in the Schengen zone without borders. No, that's not attractive. These borders were created over thousands of years for the protection of the people in these countries. They were not designed to be removed in a period of years, giving rise to massive flows of people across Europe.
Well, of course, the other thing is, Ben, we don't know what happened to Madeleine McCann, but if it is true that she was kidnapped by a German paedophile, as has been suggested, she would have been able to have been taken all the way from Playa de Luge to Germany without anybody stopping the vehicle at any point. That's not a good thing.
Absolutely right. Borders provide natural checks and points of reference at which people have to identify themselves, disclose what the purpose of their visit is, account for themselves. And that is actually a form of governance which is integral to the existence of countries and nation states. So they do away with that, which I think is absolutely necessary for our protection. But then they tell us we can't smoke in our backyards or we can't smoke in a pub and we must cross the roads at these places and we can't do more than 20 miles an hour. I mean, the whole thing is just, it's
1,200 migrants arrived in 2 days because what is amazing, we are taxed at the highest level, or one of the highest levels in our history, but the border agency can't secure the borders. I mean, I just wonder, is part of this to say, well, the Europeans were right, there's no point in having any borders because they don't work anyway?
Well, it could be. I mean, I absolutely am certain that Starmer is going to sign us up into this EU resettlement program for illegal migrants, which is effectively the legitimization of illegal movements of people by, bestowing them on member states and if we sign up to it on the United Kingdom as well, saying, well, this is your allocation. All of us need to get used to having illegal migrants, so here's your allocation. And, when you legitimize it like that, the signal you're sending to would-be illegal migrants and to people smugglers is, it's open day on Europe. Send us your people. We will look after them. We will resettle them.
Send us your people who could not get a visa to the United Kingdom. And why could they not get a visa? One would assume that they have no skills or serious criminal convictions or both.
Yeah, and this is the big difference between immigration nowadays and immigration 50 years ago. 50 years ago, there were hurdles to getting into the United Kingdom. You had to meet those hurdles, and you were absolutely a hard-working, aspirational individual, typically who bought into and was proud of British values. Now, the kind of people we're taking in through migration are those that are coming here, often with antipathetic views to our country and preying on our state, using our benefits, getting ahead of us in, for social housing, getting ahead of us for NHS appointments, being given preferential treatment in all respects. The average cost, Andre, I'm sure you're aware of this because we've chatted many times, the average cost of an illegal migrant to the United Kingdom is £50,000 per annum. On a pre-tax basis, an individual in the UK would have to earn close on 90,000 quid, which would put him in the top 5% earners to get the net cost that we are paying out willy-nilly for people who shouldn't even be in the country.
Well, Ben, I will leave you at this thought. I've got a friend of mine who's Ukrainian who said that in Eastern Europe, when they want to ethnically cleanse people at a low level, and I'm afraid in Eastern Europe, they're experts. See if you recognise any of this. Ban the teaching of your history in schools. Take your people off the television. Pull the statues down. Give preference of housing to the people coming in. Make sure community infrastructure like bars and churches are all closed down, and the list goes on like that. And you have to say that literally somebody listing how they would ethnically cleanse people in Eastern Europe is a list of what our government is doing in this country.
Yeah, you've nailed it, Andre. You've nailed it. That's nailed it.
Unbelievable. All right, that's Ben Habib, who's the former deputy leader of Reform UK.